Alright, let me set the stage for you. It is currently New Year's Day and Christmas, and I'm at my family's house. I've been working on a several-hour-long video at this point on the dream allegations with one of the most jank setups I think I have ever used. And then I get the notification that I was expecting to get quite a while ago, which is that YandereDev has released a response to the allegations. So, here we are, I guess. This is gonna be an interesting video.
Hello, I'm YandereDev, the developer of Yandere Simulator. Last year, an extremely serious allegation was made about me that I would like to address. The accusation is that I attempted to groom an underage fan of my game. I will take accountability and admit that I did discuss inappropriate topics with a fan.
Nice throw!
However, the accusation that I deliberately attempted to groom this fan is false. In this video, I would like to apologize for what I feel I should apologize for, but I would also like to give you the full story so that you know what is true and what isn't true. Let's start at the beginning. Last year, a fan of my game contacted me and wanted to chat. Usually, when a fan tries to talk with me, I just tell them that I'm too busy. But this person seemed really nice and friendly and funny, so I decided, you know what, sure, let's talk. She let me know right off the bat that she was 16, but I didn't see any problem with that. When I was 16, I had online friends that were in their 20s and 30s, so it just didn't feel weird to me. In the beginning, our conversations were normal, but she had a kind of adult sense of humor, and every now and then she would bring up a topic or ask a question that wasn't really appropriate. When this would happen, I wasn't entirely comfortable with it, but I rationalized to myself that it was no big deal and just kept talking with her.
I don't like that we're only a few minutes into this video and YandereDev is already trying to spin the narrative that he is the victim in this situation, talking about how he is uncomfortable with some of the comments from the minor and highlighting their adult sense of humor. The picture he's painting is one that makes him look like he's been wronged by the victim. I want to shut down this idea immediately without wasting any breath on it, so as a reminder, here are some of the comments Alex made to this child.
You're so cute. It's because you keep being cute. If you don't want to be called cute, then stop being so cute. It's simple logic.
What if I told you I'm only interested in girls with double D? Anything less than that is just not attractive.
Well, I mean, like, that's your preference, but do you understand how cup sizes work?
No. Big as a girl's head. I want them big as a girl's head.
I have what are considered user cups. Isn't that crazy?
Because you're so skinny?
Yep.
So it's like the ratio of the compared to, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're very skinny and that's kind of hot. Sorry, am I a bad guy for saying that? Should I go?
No. Wait, hold on. Did you ever answer that question? I asked you if you were...
Yeah, then my phone rang. Very conveniently, I had to go flee to answer the phone call. Here's a question for you. What makes you think it's possible that I'm...
You asked me that, and I gave an answer. What was it?
You're like, maybe you were shy in college, and you haven't had any time to meet people because of Yandere Sim.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm a... does that make me a pathetic loser?
Why would it make you a pathetic loser?
It's like, oh, this guy has no riz. He can't get any girl to sleep with him. Pathetic. Maidenless. No bitches?
Like, I'm half hoping you are, half hoping you're not. Because, like, if you're not, then, like, good for you, you have. But if you are, like,
You want to steal my first time? Well, I'm not very experienced with ladies.
I can tell. No.
Wow, okay, bye.
You just don't have any time. It was not like that. You just don't have any time.
Wow, so mean. You're such a bully.
I'm unable to do this weekly challenge in SAS. It is so hard.
What's the weekly challenge? Don't wait.
Oh my god! So, I know that the official ages are 18, but, like, is it high school?
No, it's a post-high school academy.
Huh. So how old is everyone?
Everyone's 18.
Is like 18 or like 18 plus?
Everyone in the... Well, I mean, there's like adults, like the teachers are older than 18. The headmaster is like 60, but all the students are 18.
Oh, that's weird. I feel like high school age makes more sense.
It would make more sense, but then everyone would complain, oh my god, the characters are under 18, so I have to contrive a story that makes them over 18. Or 18.
Because everyone gets so mad about kids. Because, like, you can't use minors. I mean, you can't disagree with that without sounding like a creep. There's nothing I can really say about that.
Mother Nature minors. Puberty starts to give and wide hips to children before they turn 18. It's not like, a person does it to a child. The child's own body does it to themselves. It's not like an adult can go to a child and cast a magic spell that gives them, haha, I've you. I gave you, and the child is like, no. No, the child just does it. The child's body does it automatically. A child gradually becomes an adult over time because of puberty.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Doing it. What, does it sound silly when I
It sounded really silly.
But it's true, though.
The first of these screenshots would be a conversation between YandereDev and the victim, where YandereDev would discuss and was trying to figure out how to present this in a way where it wasn't, with him saying, if I say, wait 2 years and try again, does it technically count as? And even later saying, but if I say, whoa, 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 don't say that until you're 18, the subtle change in phrasing makes it not. He would then continue in this second screenshot to discuss the idea of receiving images from this minor, saying that it would be super erotic seeing the minor dress and undress. With the minor saying, I'm just not sure what kind of stuff to send. Content like that is illegal and all that, but if you don't care, that's fine. This would continue into this following conversation where the victim says they don't have any problem with sharing images, but if anyone found out they would, suggesting this idea that being a year and a half away from 18 is basically the same thing as being 18, which I think the law would heavily disagree with. But apparently YandereDev does agree, because he says that there's a very small difference between a 17 and 18-year-old, and it's basically identical. They would continue this conversation until YandereDev would say, I know about all of that, but my personal opinion doesn't matter. Whether or not I think it's immoral, it is still illegal for me to be having a conversation like this with someone under 18. The victim would go on to respond saying, no one in law enforcement would find out though, and YandereDev would respond saying, yeah, I know, but if you ever decide that YandereDev guy, you could anonymously release screenshots of some statement I made towards you. But it's what's said next that really solidifies just how bad all of this is. With him continuing on, discussing this idea that he couldn't visit them on the other side of the country right now because he has to concentrate on the game so much, so the only thing he could really get out of that conversation would be explicit material. With the minor responding, which I'll provide if you promise to keep it a secret, and YandereDev responding, oh, I would keep it a secret. I think I've made my point clear. YandereDev was making inappropriate comments to this minor and played into the idea of receiving explicit content from them. He is not an innocent party or a victim, and any implication otherwise should be immediately shot down before it can fester. This is the ugly truth of his behavior that his audience is seemingly unaware of, and I find the comments made by his fans on this video and subsequent community post rather disturbing. It would appear they've taken him at his word and presumably aren't aware of the full scope of his action, and so I hope this video can illuminate them on why this response is so awful.
Eventually, I must have said something that sounded like a red flag to her, because at some point, she started to record our conversations just in case I turned out to be some kind of predator. She showed our conversations to a YouTuber, and the YouTuber decided, yep, this guy seems like we need to expose him. From what I've been hearing, it kind of sounds like the YouTuber started coaching the girl on how to manipulate me into saying things that would make me look bad, which wasn't what the girl wanted.
I am really sorry to say this, Alex, but no amount of coaching will ever get these comments out of me or any other well-adjusted adult. If these are comments that can be brought out of you towards a child as a 35-year-old man, I believe that's an issue you need to address within yourself and not any other party involved.
But you don't have to just take my word for it. The girl has written a statement about the entire situation, giving her side of the story. I've put a link to it in the description below.
Okay, Alex, let's talk about the victim's statement. But first, I would like to bring up a rather inconvenient piece of information for you. This statement is not the victim's statement, and you know that. You see,
What Alex doesn't mention in this video is that he had a strong hand in the creation of this document. The victim was involved and wrote parts of this document, but Alex then went over the entire document and told them to change any statements he felt made him look bad. And with it in mind that Alex was heavily involved with this document and pressuring the victim to make it something PR appropriate for him, I would argue almost every statement in this document is now void. I will be leaving screenshots of the victim's original statement before YandereDev made any edits, and a copy of every change he made to this document on my Twitter, but I'd like to highlight some of the most egregious changes right here.
I am Jane, or Jelly Squish, or Jelly Ann, or YandereDev's victim. This is my statement on everything that happened with Alex, aka YandereDev. I was a fan of Yandere Simulator for a good chunk of my childhood, as were many others. I loved iHas Cupquake, Markiplier, Gloom, our favorite highlighter, the whole crew. Because of how much I loved the game, I wanted to reach out to the creator via email. I sent him some emails when I was 9, super basic fan emails that he responded to very normally. I reached out to Alex right before my sophomore year of high school ended. I saw a video of him saying, "Yas, queen," on TikTok, which reminded me of his existence, and I decided it could be fun to talk to him again. He responded to my Discord DM in a very casual, normal way. We started to talk more often until eventually things got a little spicy.
Would it be okay to reword this? Things got a little spicy could be interpreted as something really bad. Depending on what you're comfortable with, you could say something like, "Occasionally, I would make a spicy joke. He enjoyed talking with me as a friend, but he was worried about being screenshotted talking to someone who was saying spicy things. So he suggested moving to Snapchat because he thought it gave him immunity to screenshots, lol." Oh, so this is him. Oh no, he's coaching them on what to say. I hate this.
I'm going to repeat what B just said. He's guiding the victim on what to say so that he can clear his name. This is the exact same thing he tried to do in the Snapchat messages. I'm sure he thought he could get away with this as well, as at the time of recording this video, I am the only person outside of YandereDev and the victim who has access to this Google document. I only saw one tweet showing some of the comments YandereDev made on this document by another creator. However, this did not include all of them and had no definitive proof that YandereDev was the one who left these comments and that it wasn't a fake account. So I suppose all those Yandere Simulator videos I made in the past have come back to benefit me, because the connections I have allowed me to get access to this document, and so I can prove definitively that this was YandereDev as his email address is attached. Back on topic, he's trying to get the victim to reframe the narrative, to make them the malicious party and be more charitable towards him. He tried to do this when he told the victim in the Snapchat messages that he was the one being victimized, and it seems he thinks this defense will still help him.
We started to talk more often until I made things spicy. At that point, we decided it would be best to move things to Snapchat since he was concerned about being screenshotted. Oh, the irony. And I was afraid of losing my new friend.
He asked me for my Snap, I gave it to him, and we started talking there. We had some casual conversation until the very first NC, which is when I decided that I should start recording.
Would it be okay to reword this too? Incident makes it sound like I did something horrible. Would it be okay to say something like, "We had some casual conversation until I started getting some weird vibes from him, and it made me wonder if the rumors I'd heard about him being a were true," which is when I decided that I should start recording our conversations just in case.
I saw a little bit about the SysF's drama from a YouTuber named Ali McC and wanted to make sure I had proof if he really did turn out to be a but I still felt this was unlikely.
Would it be okay to avoid ever mentioning this specific name? I don't want to resurrect ancient dead drama or give people something new to gossip about while I'm trying to repair my image.
In my opinion, this is one of the most malicious of the comments YandereDev makes on this document. For those who don't know, SysF's is known as an open secret in the Yandere Simulator community, as an alleged victim of YandereDev back when he used to go by the name Everzephon several years ago. I've opted not to cover this allegation in prior videos and also within this video because the evidence is all over the place, and I think there are better videos and posts about that if you were looking for information on it. I find it wildly concerning that YandereDev is still trying to run from this claim several years later and doing his best to avoid ever addressing it head on. And frankly, I think a response from him to the allegations is necessary at this point.
I saw a little bit about previous allegations/drama from a YouTuber named AliMCC and wanted to make sure I had proof if he really did turn out to be a
On Snap, he was semi-normal, but also kind of pervy, as I'd expect from a man who spends his time looking at anime girls all day, every day.
Would it be okay to reword this? Maybe something like, but he had a pervy sense of humor sometimes?
The subtle change in terminology here would benefit him a lot. He doesn't want to be seen as acting pervy towards a 16-year-old. He'd prefer to be seen as someone who made off-color jokes that could be taken inappropriately. That would make a distinction between him being labeled a predator and him being viewed as someone who made inappropriate jokes. This is damage control.
I was bored of just texting because he always sounds like Ben Shapiro when he types, so we decided to VC. I was really insanely Loki wouldn't even remember that we talked if I hadn't recorded. I recorded the voice call, which was quite silly, then sent it to my friends and Ali.
I'm not sure if it's important to mention this. It's not necessary to the story, is it? Maybe it would be better to leave this detail out. I feel like it'll create new problems/drama.
The victim would respond to this comment on the document with a particularly important allegation, claiming that YandereDev would only speak with them in a call once they were under the influence. However, they would still remove this comment from the document altogether.
We thought it was really funny, but he did say some kind of red flaggy things, jokingly asked me about a dog and peanut butter. I know you know. So I decided to keep recording in case he said some other things in a more serious way.
I'm really sorry, but could I ask you to please not mention this? I appreciate the fact that you clarified it was a joke, but people would definitely overreact to an unnecessary degree over this detail.
Ali wanted the voice recordings in better quality, so she told me to download OBS. At that point, I was still undecided on any video about him, but I thought if he really was a creep, which I still was unsure of, I would need all the proof I could get, so I agreed. He said some very interesting things on Snap and over VC throughout our conversations that I asked Ali to clip for my server soundboard since they were really funny in his monotone voice. Alex started to get a little more romantic and personal with me, which is when Ali decided to interview me and talk about what was in VC.
Can I please ask you to not use the word romantic? It doesn't feel accurate. Personal is fine. It gets the point across.
Once again, this is Alex trying to rephrase the victim's comment so that he is represented as charitably as possible. The victim clearly felt that he was acting romantically and he didn't even deny it in his comment. He instead opted to try to convince them that personal was clear enough, when I'd argue it wasn't. And the victim took him at that and changed it to the following.
Alex started to get a little more personal with me, which is when Ali decided to interview me and talk about what was in VC.
We decided that it was pretty icky and he needed to chill, so the video had a set upload date and everything. Then my friend's TikTok about the situation went viral. He stretched the truth a little bit, claiming Alex a 9-year-old to make it more clickable, then released a small audio clip of Alex being weird and badly explaining how puberty works after we were talking about Kokona's massive honkers. Yeah, kids totally say honkers. People ran with this all over other social media platforms, saying he a ton of underage girls and blah blah blah. Then they started to make fake screenshots of weird stuff he did. I confronted him about these. He showed me his DMs with those people and they were totally empty. I asked Ali to not upload the video because Alex and I were so stressed about it. She did it anyways. I wanted the video posted in full or not at all. She chose to cut it up into weird bits and change my voice. Not epic. I've forgiven her though. In total, this stuff happened over about 6 months.
I'm really sorry to nitpick, but didn't we meet around my 35th birthday, June 30th? That would mean we were only talking for 2 months, 3 maximum.
This is Alex, presumably, trying to minimize the severity of these events by shrinking the time frame. The victim would respond saying when they met and arguing that it was still at least 6 months that they were talking in private with Alex. However, this comment would still end up being removed from the final document. I also think it's relevant to highlight that the victim claims Alex showed the victim his DMs with the people Alex had supposedly wronged, and they were empty. It's possible they mean that Alex didn't have these people added at all, and thus there was never a chat, but this could also mean Alex had intentionally deleted all of these messages. Obviously, that is just a hypothetical though, and we have no evidence to base that on.
Ali did tell me how to get evidence, what kind of stuff would be concrete proof, and we mutually decided that the best proof we could get would be Alex sending me. Her goal for the video was exposing him trying to diddle a minor. My goal was to prevent any future victims if he truly was a predator.
Can I please ask you to clarify that these things did not occur? Of course, none of that actually happened. He didn't send nudes, he didn't try to diddle a minor, and he didn't turn out to be a predator after all. Oh, dude, come the f*** on.
This would lead the victim to saying the following in the final version of the document.
My goal was to prevent any future victims if he was truly a predator, which I think she also partially wanted to do, but she was on the Alex hate train, which caused her to be a little pushy and manipulative, and it seemed more personal than protective.
Very different reasons for wanting the video.
This is a part of the document I find particularly interesting, as the victim made a change here, presumably without Alex asking them to do so. In the final draft, the victim would say the following, though this statement did not exist in the original draft, and originally it continued to the statement immediately following this one.
During this process, I started to feel a real emotional connection with him, major crush, and I started to purposely get reactions out of him for his attention. Though nothing illegal happened, I was aware of his social vulnerabilities and took advantage of those for my own gain. If anyone is going to throw around the word my intentional manipulation for his attention fits that definition far more than what he did with his questionable jokes. Ali coached me into being exactly what he wanted, based on years of her online stalking, along with a community dedicated to bringing him down. She used the same techniques that the FBI uses during sting operations: curate a specific environment, build trust, lure in, take down. Ali disrespected my wishes when I didn't want the video posted because it was an elaborate scheme to bring views back to her dead channel. Every person has faults, but dedicating multiple videos to someone's faults shows her true colors. She is manipulative, hateful, and absolutely not a trustworthy source of news. Many of the audio clips were cut up and put together to make him sound terrible. Conversations that were not real. Taking the worst elements of someone's conversations, removing all context, and putting things together that sound extremely towards a 16-year-old. Ali tricked people into believing he was a bad person to save her dying YouTube channel.
I find these statements to be a glaring contradiction to the rest of the victim's testimony, including in the responses they made to Alex's comments on this document, and I'm not sure why. The Snapchat messages we have clearly show Alex discussing the idea of receiving explicit images from the victim. The audio recordings we have show full discussions between Alex and the child that are totally inappropriate, including his comment about the victim potentially taking his first time, etc. The evidence says clearly that what the victim is stating here is untrue. And while I understand that they have an issue with how Ali handled this situation, as do I based on what was said here, I don't understand the comment where the victim blames themselves, saying they manipulated this 35-year-old man into taking advantage of them. As, regardless, I would argue if a 35-year-old man is playing into indecent comments from a child, that is their own responsibility. I invite you to take your own interpretation from this statement though.
Alex did not me. He was talking to me like he talks to all of his friends. But I'm not a guy or an adult, so it came off as hella creepy unless you know his intentions. He has autism or something. I compared him to my diagnostic packet. So he really struggles socially and has no clue when to open his mouth. If the voice calls were released in full, there would be sarcastic and joking context that would explain his behavior as creepy, but not predatory.
YandereDev would then comment to say the following, leading to the victim's statement changing from regarding his behavior as creepy to just strange.
May I please ask for creepy to be changed to weird or awkward?
He had no bad intentions, just wanted a friend. This part it reads so much like Yandev. I'm just gonna read it like Yandev. Okay? If a cute girl was being that bubbly and nice to me, I probably would have done the same. Most of our interactions were sarcastic with context, but without context, it just looks horrifying. Text has no tone, leaving it up to you, the reader. If you read something wrong, it sounds wrong. Many of the questionable things he said to me were sarcastic or a result of him being socially inept. But that context/tone is lost when cut apart and split into a video. Ali truly believed that she was saving a minor from a Alex truly believed he had a friend who he could trust not to judge him. I failed Alex. Ali failed me, and everything sucks. It is probably for the best that Alex doesn't talk to me anymore, but I still lost a close friend. He is trying to learn why what he did was wrong, even though I personally don't believe he's a predator. I've been sent gore, animal stuff, just a lot of stuff. I've been harassed, lied about, had videos made about me with edited / false / made up information to make me look bad. I was ignored by people who claimed they were trying to help. Every person so far who has tried to empathize with me has body shamed Alex, been extremely harsh on his personality, or has shared their own experiences of him them. Calling your drawing cute is not being mean to you because you're annoying is not harassment. Running his platforms like North Korea is not bullying. My relationship to him is unique to me, and sending me your examples of him being a bad person is honestly just annoying and stupid. Dev was mean to me once. Every person in my DMs trying to make me feel better. No one understands the situation other than Alex and me. You are all delusional if you think that any of your experiences compare to a 6-month close friendship with the creator of Yandere Simulator.
In the interest of not making this video any longer, I'm not going to comment on these last few statements. But I think the fact Alex presents this document as if it was a statement from the victim when he was so heavily involved in it is incredibly malicious, and after seeing the difference between the document before and after Alex touched it, I have to say it's hard to take anything said here at face value. With that being said, let's continue Alex's video.
So, with the YouTuber apparently instructing the girl on how to steer our conversations in an inappropriate direction, our discussions got pretty weird. I wasn't comfortable with it, and I tried to express that, but like an idiot, I just went along with it anyway. Because I had gotten into the habit of being really candid around this girl and just casually responding to whatever she said, it was very easy for her to get recordings of me answering questions I shouldn't have answered and discussing topics I should not have discussed. And the YouTuber then used those recordings to make a 40-minute long video accusing me of being a Out of respect for all of the people in the world who have actually been, we should use the word correctly. Is when an adult tries to establish a relationship with a child with the intention of exploiting or abusing the child. That doesn't describe what I did. I didn't develop a friendship with the girl for that reason. That wasn't my intention. I did not attempt to establish a romantic or relationship with the girl.
Once again, we see a pathetic attempt from Alex to pass the blame to the victim in this situation, trying to argue that they were the person who made these conversations inappropriate, and that he only acted the way he did because he felt comfortable around them because that was the way they acted. Unfortunately for Alex, everyone with a brain cell is aware that it is still highly inappropriate for an adult to be talking this way with a child, and that this isn't an excuse that justifies his actions. He then tries to take the moral high ground against the people who've called him out, talking about how out of respect for real victims of he wants to lay down what actually is so that the term isn't misused. The problem is he doesn't realize that the definition he uses for would still categorize him as a Taking a look at the Snapchat messages we have, which he doesn't dispute the legitimacy of in this video, I would argue his behavior completely falls under his own definition of He was discussing highly inappropriate subjects with this child, gave them the proposal to take his first time, and even discussed the possibility of receiving explicit content from them. There is no question. Even if the discussion only surrounded whether he was being romantic with this child, he says himself in the Snapchat messages that, of course, the one time a girl is actually nice to him, he got attached. He can attempt to revise history however he wishes to make himself look better within this video, but we have the evidence and we know his behavior behind the scenes was incredibly wrong. No matter what kind of grey you try to paint this picture with, it'll still end up more red than the YouTube logo.
But after having my behavior explained to me as commonly associated with romance, I can understand how it was interpreted that way.
This part is utterly hilarious because it's obvious he's trying to have the best of both worlds, but in trying to have both, he manages to achieve neither. He wants to argue that nothing he did could be considered because there was no romantic or element, but also that if people take it as if there was romantic elements, it was just him making a mistake and he didn't realize at the time that is how it would be taken. This pathetic response, an attempt to make a video like Quotes, falls flat on its face at every turn, and what he's trying to do here is more transparent than glass.
I feel like it's worth mentioning that a lot of the remarks I made only sound bad when they're out of context. For example, there was one time when the girl jokingly said, "You should make an OnlyFans." And I said, "No, that's dumb. No one would ever want to see that." And she said something like, "Come on, it's so easy to make money on OnlyFans." And when I heard that, I thought, whoa, that's a little concerning. Don't tell me that social media is brainwashing this generation to think that they should just go directly into porn the second they turn 18 because it's the best way to get rich quick. That's a little concerning. I wanted to know if she was joking or if she was being serious. So I asked her, "Are you planning to start an OnlyFans?" And of course, the YouTuber used the recording of me saying, "Are you planning to start an OnlyFans?" to frame me as someone who initiates horrifically inappropriate discussions with children, which is just completely dishonest.
I like that we can watch him attempt to reframe his statements into a better light for his audience in real time because we have the original audio of what he said. He's desperately trying to figure out the best way to spin this story in his video so that his audience forgives him and doesn't view it as something genuinely concerning, as it was. But if we take his original statements and compare and contrast them to how he describes them within this video, one to one, you will see how different his wording was, and that all of this extra context to how he felt at the time did not change how it came across, and it does not come across that way within the footage.
There's this one really important thing to remember, and that's that all the money I get is donations from people who want to support me. And if I start working less, then they will think, oh, he's not working, he's lazy, I should not support this guy.
Why can't you start OnlyFans?
Okay, let's just hypothetically imagine I have an OnlyFans. Now, what do I post on the OnlyFans? You mean like just naked pictures of me? I don't think I'm good looking enough for anyone to want to subscribe to my OnlyFans.
What? Like...
When you turn 18, are you going to start an OnlyFans?
God, no.
Well, how can you recommend that someone else do it if you wouldn't even be able to do it yourself?
The differences between his PR sanitized version of these statements and the actual statements themselves are glaring, and I think once again it just shows him trying to paint himself in a better light, but it's not working.
There's a part of me that wants to go point by point down the list of every single questionable or suspicious thing I said and provide context for absolutely everything, but that's not really the main issue here. For one thing, a lot of the stuff I said is just weird no matter what the context is. I'll just admit it. But more importantly, I never should have let conversations like that happen in the first place. A normal, mentally healthy adult would have just blocked the girl immediately after the very first time she said something inappropriate. But I didn't. And having to face that fact was a wake-up call that made me realize I had deteriorated mentally.
This section of his video is bizarre, because for some reason he openly acknowledges that all of his other statements were inappropriate regardless of the context and that there was no excusing them, and that no other person who was mentally sound would ever act this way towards a child. But in doing so, it makes it blatant that he was cherry-picking examples earlier and means that the prior statements he made in defense of himself no longer hold water, because he's not addressing all of the statements where he actually did wrong in his mind. Again, it seems like he's trying to have the best of both worlds by excusing the ones he thinks he can get away with, but not addressing the ones he knows will make him look bad so the people in this audience who haven't seen the videos about him don't know. But it just doesn't work. And his downplaying of his other comments to just weird also doesn't work. But obviously this video isn't intended for us, the people who won't forgive him because we already know what he's done. This video is intended for people who have only seen the allegations on a surface level, may just take him at his word, or are too young to know the difference between someone honestly making a mistake and intentionally doing something malicious, and will probably go, well, I'm glad he's addressed everything, back to supporting his project as usual. Which is how his response to every previous allegation has gone. It seems like this is a pattern for Alex, where he realizes that he's in trouble and then addresses it without actually acknowledging what he's done or downplaying the severity of it, and then his core fanbase will go back to supporting him like nothing happened.
So, after this whole controversy happened, I decided to take some time to just reflect and try to figure out how I had turned into the type of person who would let something like this happen. After talking it over with a lot of different people, I think I've developed an understanding of exactly how things got to this point, and I think I have the vocabulary to explain it now, too. Over the past 10 years, I neglected absolutely every aspect of my well-being in favor of working on my video game project. I almost never left my house for any reason. I had no social life whatsoever, and I had no one that I could call a true friend. A lot of people warned me that they could see my mental health deteriorating and that I was exhibiting a lot of self-destructive behavior, and I just ignored all of them. I was lonely and depressed and miserable and getting worse every year and doing nothing to make any of it better and ignoring all of the warning signs that were being given to me. When you neglect your psychological and social needs that badly for that long, you eventually become so desperate for social interaction and positive affirmation that you become willing to have inappropriate interactions you shouldn't be having, as long as it's fulfilling the social needs that have gone completely unmet for years.
This attempt to clear his name is normally known by people as the "I was in a dark place" response. He argues that because his life has been f***ed up for the past few years, that justifies his wrongdoing. But in reality, it isn't the audience's responsibility to accept that he's a flawed individual with a ton of mistakes in his past, and forgive him for the way he harmed a child because he has his own set of problems, because ultimately he is responsible for ruining his own life. He's responsible for dedicating too much of his life to this project. He's responsible for failing to maintain friendships. He's responsible for talking inappropriately with a child. And no amount of sugarcoating it will make it any better for him.
Acknowledging all of this was step one. Step two was determining what I would have to change about my life in order to repair the damage that I had done to my psyche over the past 10 years. So, I decided to just step back from game development for 3 months to just work on myself and try to develop a more healthy lifestyle. I started seeing a therapist. I started leaving my house and going outside and interacting with other human beings. I experimented with hobbies that don't involve the use of a computer screen. I found a much better work-life balance. And most importantly of all, I made friends. I developed a social life. I made meaningful connections with people my age. That made a bigger difference than anything else. I no longer feel so desperate for social interaction that I'd be willing to have inappropriate conversations just to fill some gap in my life. I feel like I've removed the weaknesses and vulnerabilities that enabled this entire situation to happen in the first place.
I don't think this needs to be said, but let's keep it real. When it comes to Yandere Simulator, you want to cover every base. 3 months is not an acceptable amount of time to suddenly fix your life and become a better person. I appreciate that he's making steps to improve himself, but it's too little and too late. You don't get to retroactively become the good guy and fix all of the problems within yourself and move past all the wrong and harm you've caused. You don't deserve the forgiveness of the people who are supporting you. So it doesn't matter what you do. Go fix your life and have a social life outside of your platform.
It's worth mentioning that sometime after this entire controversy started, 2 images started to circulate. These images are fake Discord screenshots depicting interactions between me and children that have never actually happened. These images were either created in Photoshop or made by an impersonator using my username and avatar. This isn't the way that people speak to other people. This is the way that you write dialogue when you're trying to make a comical image for the internet to laugh at. These are not real. Another piece of information I would like to address would be the claim that I was this girl ever since she was 9 years old. That's not true. Apparently, she sent me an email 7 years ago. I'm assuming it was just typical fan mail. I always respond to every fan who contacts me, so I must have replied and said something like, "Hey, thanks for your kind words. Glad you liked the game." But just the fact that she had contacted me when she was 9, and then later she contacted me again last year, somehow magically transformed into a narrative that I had been her for 7 years straight. No. That's not what happened. That's just something that people made up.
I don't have much to say here because we don't have much context to the emails he shared, and his statement seems to make sense with the context he's given. But if these are fake screenshots, I appreciate that he's addressed them so that people know.
But even though I didn't harm a child, even though I didn't traumatize or victimize anyone, I do feel that I've made mistakes that I need to apologize for. I allowed myself to deteriorate into a person who was making horrible decisions on a regular basis that not only harmed me, but also the people around me. By making some incredibly stupid and careless remarks during conversations I should not have been having, I created a huge, completely unnecessary scandal and made myself into a figure who is so controversial that people are afraid to be associated with me or have any kind of connection to my game. As a result, people who enjoyed contributing to the project had to quit. YouTubers who enjoyed playing the game had to stop. Companies had to sever all ties with me. And a lot of fans were deeply hurt and upset.
I don't like that he doesn't apologize for his actions, but apologizes for allowing himself to make those mistakes. Above that though, I don't like that he says that the people who originally were supporting him no longer want to because he's too controversial, and not because they don't want to support someone who's done the things he's done. This narrative and the way he's reframing it does not paint the picture properly or honestly.
I'm sorry for having stupid, inappropriate conversations I never should have had. I'm sorry for neglecting myself until I created problems for everyone around me. I'm sorry to all of the people who I ignored when they warned me countless times that my behavior was becoming more and more self-destructive. And I'm also sorry for one other thing. After this whole controversy started, people started targeting anyone associated with me or my project for harassment. People even targeted the girl that I spoke to, spreading misinformation about her and spamming her with horrible images. It's one thing to screw up your own life, but it's another thing entirely to screw up so badly that you bring hate and abuse and harassment into the lives of others just for being associated with you. I am deeply sorry for that. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me.
Opting not to even apologize to the victim you hurt is probably the worst decision made within this entire video. This video is pointless because you aren't apologizing for what you did. You're moving the goalpost and only apologizing to the people who you want to win favor with. It's pathetic.
Well, now that I've owned up to what I did wrong and established that I'm not a where do we go from here? Well, I don't think that 3 months of self-care are enough to magically fix every flaw I've ever had. I'm sure I still have plenty of room for self-improvement, but I'm doing a lot better mentally now than I was before, and I think I'm ready to get back to work. I'm going to continue releasing updates for the game, and I'm going to continue releasing videos on my secondary channel.
So now we get to what Alex actually cares about in this video. Not the victim or apologizing for his wrongdoing, but getting back to work on Yandere Simulator and making more money from his gullible fan base. It's transparently malicious and evil, and I don't think he should be able to get away with this, and I don't think he should be winning back favor from his audience for this. This is not a good response to the allegations, apology to the victim, or apology to his audience. It's 15 minutes of damage control, downplaying the severity of his actions, and trying to win back favor with the people he cares about so that he can keep making his game and keep making money.
I understand that there's probably going to be less people contributing to the game, less people playing the game, and less people supporting the game, but I just have to live with that. No matter what kind of numbers I have, whether it's views or downloads or income or anything else, I'm still going to keep working on the game. It's too important to me for me to ever give up on it. There's a lot I would like to say about the current state of Yandere Simulator and the future of the project, but that's not what you clicked this video for. So I'm just going to write all of that in a blog post and link to it in the description down below. Just in case it wasn't already clear, I just want to firmly state that I don't blame the girl for anything that happened, and I don't want anyone to harass her or make fun of her in the comments section or anything stupid like that. So if that's what you are planning on doing, don't. Over the years, there have been a lot of other controversies as well. Some of them I never addressed at all, and others I attempted to address, but I just mishandled it and botched it and made things even worse. So eventually, I'd like to make a video, kinda like this one, where I actually address those past controversies properly. I can't guarantee when it will happen, but it is something that I do want to do in the future.
If that video will be, as he says here, like this video, we don't want it. We don't need more excuses to justify your behavior. You've made enough of them over the time, and it's not going to do anything to suddenly clear your name or beat those claims out. You failed to make a good response to the allegations here, and I don't think you would make a better response to anything else claimed against you. After all, you've already failed to make good responses to most of those claims in the past, so I presume you'd just regurgitate the same arguments and hope that you win people's favor. This video was a major disappointment, just like his blog posts. And once again, I'm sat here wondering how anyone can see this and forgive YandereDev for what he's done. He's not some teenager who's gonna fuck up and improve over time. He's a 35-year-old man who was speaking inappropriately with a child, and no matter how much he tries to sugarcoat it, it was unacceptable. Reflect on your actions and improve your life however you wish, Alex, but do not even consider returning to this project because you won't receive any support for it. And Yandere Simulator will never be a successful game now.
With that said, there is one false accusation that I think is relevant enough to address now rather than later. I don't want this to turn into a long, rambling video, so I'll make this quick. There are a lot of people who are under the impression that I advocate for abolishing the age of consent and replacing it with a license. No, that is not true. 10 years ago, in 2014, I had a debate with someone about whether or not age should be the sole determining factor in deciding whether or not to judge someone as an adult. I argued that just because someone has blown out an arbitrary number of candles on their birthday cake, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they are competent enough to make certain life-changing decisions. If you want to drive a car, you have to pass a driving exam and earn a driver's license. So I thought, what if it worked the same way with becoming an adult? What if there was some sort of exam or test that you had to pass in order to be recognized as an adult and authorized to make certain purchases and decisions? Well, if you think about it for like 2 seconds, you can immediately identify like a million problems with that concept. And that's because it's not an idea that I put any thought into. It's not some deeply held personal belief that I will die defending. It was just a random hypothetical thought experiment I came up with 10 years ago while I was being contrarian towards someone in an argument. But sadly, that's just one of dozens of random offhand remarks I've made over the years that have been screenshotted and used to paint a completely inaccurate picture of who I am and what beliefs I hold. So I think that when I eventually make a video to address past controversies properly, I should also clear up a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings as well. For now though, I've said everything that I wanted to say. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being willing to hear me out.
Hey. I have an update for you. Originally, I planned to end the video at this point and move on to another subject. But then, I received a legal threat from a third party involved in this situation, with a request to remove all coverage of the situation from my channel. You may have noticed that Alex took down his video too. This is why. I think it's obvious at this point though that I won't be complying with these takedown requests. I'd like to explain why. 1. All of my videos are protected by fair use law. 2. I only discuss factual evidence or provide a disclaimer where necessary that information discussed is alleged. And 3. All information included within my videos is either already public or I have direct consent to publicize it. However, you may have noticed at this point that I've removed my past 2 videos on this subject. That's because, although I know my content is compliant with YouTube's terms of service and the law, YouTube will comply with any takedown request, and I don't wish to risk receiving 3 strikes and losing my channel on a bet that YouTube won't completely f me over. For that reason, I've decided to include both of the 2 videos I've taken down from my channel within this video, so that if you haven't seen them until now, want an archive of them, or want to know what was said, that it's all still accessible. I believe in getting the information out there and not giving Alex wiggle room to get away with this, which means I want the entire uncomfortable truth out there, even if it means this video is longer than originally intended. That said, I'll let a not so sleepy version of myself from the past take over. You know, I have this strange feeling that somehow I've stepped 2 years back into the past. I never thought I was going to make another video about Yandere Simulator, YandereDev, or anything even loosely related to this situation ever again. When I was getting my start as a commentator, I milked this situation dry. I made videos daily about it. I am still to this day embarrassed by the kind of content I put out back then. I milked this situation like the milk was made of diamonds, and diamonds in this analogy taste really good. And then I grew up. I still get people to this day tell me that they liked that kind of content or that they subscribed from that, and honestly, why? However, thank you for subscribing back then. You could also subscribe now if you would like to subscribe by clicking the button, because I won't get another opportunity in this video to say it. Anyway, I'll presume based on how many people subscribe from those videos and how many people messaged me asking me to cover this situation who I haven't spoken to in years, that you know what Yandere Simulator is. The game that's been in development hell for 10 years about yandere girls, panty shots, and everything else an almost 40-year-old weird anime fan could conjure up. When Yandere Simulator first When Yandere Simulator first started development years ago, people actually kind of enjoyed the concept. It was fun and creative, which had people intrigued, and a lot of creators made videos playing the game for a bit of fun. However, in recent years, the developer, YandereDev, has found himself embroiled in all the controversy you could imagine. From the dreadful development of his game, dubbed Spaghetti Code, which left many developers absolutely dumbfounded, to his inappropriate comments and actions, this man has an online history of controversy like no other this side of Christian. And while he has found himself in controversy for similar things to what's being discussed in this video, when he made his comments about a license, which would be given to people who passed a test to prove that they were at an age of maturity. I don't even think I need to point out how insane that is. I truly did not expect to hear allegations that this 35-year-old man had been speaking inappropriately with a 16-year-old child. This information became public on September the 25th, when a video by the YouTube channel AliMCC was publicized called "The New Allegations and Evidence Against YandereDev." This video included multiple calls and several chat messages between the alleged victim and YandereDev, where conversations would go from YandereDev making inappropriate comments about how the minor was cute or otherwise attractive, to Snapchat messages that were allegedly sent by YandereDev that imply he would like to receive explicit material from said minor, and that he would keep said act a secret.
You're so cute. It's because you keep being cute. If you don't want to be called cute, then stop being so cute. It's simple logic.
Having heard that audio, I think you understand how severe this situation actually is. So I think it's important that we make it clear that YandereDev was aware of the minor in question's age. There are two conversations in specific that make this very clear. One where YandereDev has a conversation with the minor and they bring up how old they were when Yandere Simulator started, and another where he brings up the idea of OnlyFans to them and specifically notes when you turn 18.
Because you have been working on the game since I was 7?
I've been working on it for, I've been working on it since 2014.
Oh yeah, I was 7. I was 7. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to process that.
There's this one really important thing to remember, and that's that all the money I get is donations from people who want to support me. And if I start working less, then they will think, oh, he's not working, he's lazy, I should not support this guy.
Why can't you start OnlyFans?
Okay, let's just hypothetically imagine I have an OnlyFans. Now, what do I post on the OnlyFans? You mean like just naked pictures of me? I don't think I'm good looking enough for anyone to want to subscribe to my OnlyFans.
Like,
when you turn 18, are you going to start an OnlyFans?
God, no.
Well, how can you recommend that someone else do it if you wouldn't even be able to do it yourself?
From this point on, truly hits the fan. YandereDev starts having very inappropriate conversations with this minor that range from conversations about bust sizes to conversations about whether the minor in question would like to take his... Even if we're playing devil's advocate here and saying that he was entirely joking, this was not an appropriate conversation to have between a 35-year-old man and a 16-year-old. I don't feel like that needs to be said, but I know some people really like to come to the defense of this guy.
What if I told you I'm only interested in girls with double D breasts? Anything less than that is just not attractive.
Well, I mean, like, that's your preference, but do you understand how cup sizes work?
No. Big as a girl's head. I want them big as a girl's head.
I have what are considered, these are A cups, isn't that crazy?
Because you're so skinny?
Yep.
So it's like the ratio of the bust compared to... Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're very skinny and that's kind of hot. Sorry, am I a bad guy for saying that? Should I go die?
No. Wait, hold on, did you ever answer that question? I asked you if you were...
Yeah, then my phone rang. Very conveniently, I had to go flee to answer the phone call. Here's a question for you. What makes you think it's possible that I'm...
You asked me that, and I gave an answer. What was it?
You're like, maybe you were shy in college, and you haven't had any time to meet people because of Yandere Sim.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm a... Does that make me a pathetic loser?
Why would it make you a pathetic loser?
It's like, oh, this guy has no riz. He can't get any girl to sleep with him. Pathetic. Maidenless. No bitches?
Like, I'm half hoping you are, half hoping you're not. Because, like, if you're not, then, like, good for you, you have. But if you are, like,
You want to steal my first time? Well, I'm not very experienced with ladies.
You can tell. No.
Wow, okay, bye.
You just don't have any time. It was not like that. You just don't have any time.
Wow, so mean. You're such a bully.
I'm unable to do this weekly challenge in SAS. It is so hard.
What's the weekly challenge? Don't wait.
Oh my god.
I honestly think that even if this was where all of the allegations ended, this would still be enough proof to completely ruin this man's career. It's very hard to argue that you're learning and changing when you're a 35-year-old man. You have had the opportunity to learn and change, you're just a creep. But obviously, this isn't where the allegations end, not even close. We have so much more to go over, and to be quite frank with you, I'm not even sure where to begin. To preface this next clip, I think a few things need to be made clear. I do believe that the victim went into this situation with the intent of publicizing this evidence against YandereDev. That's based on the fact that they were recording all of these calls and collecting proof that these calls were from the real YandereDev account from the start. I'm sorry, but the argument that he says funny things in call and that's why all these calls were recorded doesn't really cut it with me. And the kind of leading questions they were presenting towards him that I feel were loaded with the intent to set him up to basically ruin his entire career himself. However, I don't think that makes YandereDev any less guilty by any means, and I am appreciative that the questions were posed this way because it really does dig his own grave for him. My concern for how this information was publicized goes out of the window as soon as there's proof that this information is actually true. The severity of the behaviors exhibited by YandereDev here takes precedence over my concern for anything else.
So, I know that the official ages are 18, but like, is it high school?
No, it's a post-high school academy.
Huh. So how old is everyone?
Everyone's 18.
Just like 18 or like 18 plus?
Everyone in the, well, I mean, there's like adults, like the teachers are older than 18. The headmaster is like 60, but all the students are 18.
Oh, that's weird. I feel like high school age makes more sense.
It would make more sense, but then everyone would complain, oh my god, the characters are under 18, so I have to contrive a story that makes them over 18. Or 18.
Because everyone gets so mad about kids. Because, like, you can't minors. I mean, you can't disagree with that without sounding like a creep. There's nothing I can really say about that.
Mother Nature minors. Puberty starts to give breasts and wide hips to children before they turn 18. It's not like, you know, a person does it to a child. The child's own body does it to themselves. It's not like an adult can go to a child and cast a magic spell that gives them breasts. Haha, I've you. I gave you breasts. And the child is like, no. No, the child just does it. The child's body does it automatically. A child gradually becomes an adult over time because of puberty.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Doing it. What, does it sound silly when I freeze it?
It sounded really silly.
But it's true, though.
To add supplemental context to this conversation, I would like to discuss YandereDev's past comments about the age of and a license. I'm not going to go over the whole of that situation because there's a lot to cover. Instead, I'm just going to read directly from his debunk page where he addresses allegations against himself, and I think you will understand the concern behind YandereDev's comments here. Not that I'm saying it wasn't already concerning, but that it's about to get a lot worse. In response to the claim, YandereDev wants to abolish the age of consent and replace it with a license. He says, one day in 2014, I received hate mail from someone who was offended by Yandere Simulator. Because I felt attacked, I started arguing with the person. They said, your game is creepy because the characters are underage. And I responded, the age of is different in every country, so does that mean the game is only creepy in some countries? The reason why I responded this way is because I felt like I was slapping them with a witty comeback. I wanted to be contrarian towards them purely for the sake of being contrarian. They had a rebuttal, so I responded with a rebuttal of my own, and we kept going back and forth. I focused exclusively on trying to contradict everything they said. Eventually, they started talking about predatory behavior. In order to continue pursuing the sensation of haha I slapped them with an epic comeback, I had to start contradicting whatever they said about that, which led to me making a series of statements that looked like I was defending predators. For example, if they said predators are evil, I would respond by saying predatory behavior is involuntary, just like a mental illness or orientation, because I only cared about one thing, contradicting everything they said in order to feel like I had won the argument. Eventually, the conversation somehow turned to the topic of abolishing the age of. This was the first time in the conversation that I actually felt like we had arrived at an intellectually engaging subject. Some people mentally develop at different speeds than other people. This means that one age of doesn't work for everyone. For example, some people might be mentally developed enough at 18, but other people might not be mentally developed enough until 19 or 20. For this reason, the concept of an age of is slightly flawed. It was an interesting hypothetical thought experiment, so I actually put a bit of thought into it. If the age of had to be replaced by something else, what would it be replaced with? Instead of selecting an arbitrary number to permit people, what else could you do? Well, it would be convenient if there was a machine you could place on your head that would scan your brain and determine your current level of mental development. If the machine was 100% accurate, then it would be able to objectively determine whether or not a person is ready. The way I phrased this was really stupid. I said something like, what if there was a test, and if you pass it, you get a license? Wouldn't that be better than having an age of... The person I was arguing with was mortified and asked, what if a 14-year-old passed this test? Would you permit them? It was an invalid question because no 14-year-old could possibly mentally develop fast enough to pass the brain scan test. It simply would never happen, but because I was in contrarian mode and just wanted to contradict everything this person said, I simply responded, yeah, if the test is designed to prove something objectively true, then it must be objectively true. Throughout this entire explanation, it's obvious that YandereDev is watering down the severity of what he said and retroactively adding context or reasoning behind what he said to make it seem less concerning. But I think, given the current situation, we need to revisit weird comments like this one and maybe take another look at it. There is so much wrong here, there, and everywhere else surrounding YandereDev that I don't think it can go understated. This is where the story gets so much worse though, as YandereDev then catches wind of the fact a video about this situation is being made due to some TikToks made by one of the victim's friends. He would then immediately reach out to said victim and ask them to lie about the situation. He would say, I'm going to delete Snapchat now. There is something I want you to do, but I know you probably won't do it. Please say, I lied. None of it was real. I asked my friend to use a YandereDev AI voice changer. This is not actually his voice. Please don't actually release any video. The evidence is all fake. The victim since alleged that the dev was also threatening to sue them as well. At this point, the victim would then publicize more Snapchat messages between them and YandereDev that seemed to get a lot more explicit. To preface this, I cannot directly confirm that these Snapchats really are YandereDev. However, at this point in time, I believe it is entirely reasonable to believe these screenshots. The first of these screenshots would be a conversation between YandereDev and the victim, where YandereDev would discuss and was trying to figure out how to present this in a way where it wasn't, with him saying, if I say, wait 2 years and try again, does it technically count as... And even later saying, but if I say, whoa, 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 don't say that until you're 18, the subtle change in phrasing makes it not... He would then continue in this second screenshot to discuss the idea of receiving images from this minor, saying that it would be super erotic seeing the minor dress and undress. With the minor saying, I'm just not sure what kind of stuff to send. Content like that is illegal and all that, but if you don't care, that's fine. This would continue into this following conversation where the victim says they don't have any problem with sharing images, but if anyone found out they would, suggesting this idea that being a year and a half away from 18 is basically the same thing as being 18, which I think the law would heavily disagree with. But apparently YandereDev does agree, because he says that there's a very small difference between a 17 and 18-year-old, and it's basically identical. They would continue this conversation until YandereDev would say, I know about all of that, but my personal opinion doesn't matter. Whether or not I think it's immoral, it is still illegal for me to be having a conversation like this with someone under 18. The victim would go on to respond saying, no one in law enforcement would find out though, and YandereDev would respond saying, yeah, I know, but if you ever decide that YandereDev guy, you could anonymously release screenshots of some statement I made towards you. But it's what's said next that really solidifies just how bad all of this is. With him continuing on, discussing this idea that he couldn't visit them on the other side of the country right now because he has to concentrate on the game so much, so the only thing he could really get out of that conversation would be explicit material. With the minor responding, which I'll provide if you promise to keep it a secret, and YandereDev responding, oh, I would keep it a secret. After YandereDev became aware that a video was being made, he would have a conversation with the minor where he would go as far as to coerce them to not make this situation public. And honestly, my stomach starts to churn reading this chat because it is so obvious how disingenuous and manipulative he is being. The minor would directly say to him, this relationship was totally not okay, I'm 16, and he responded by saying, I am so lonely and miserable and depressed and unhappy. Of course, the one time a girl is actually nice to me, I get attached. You were so fun and funny and charismatic, it made me want to keep talking. I am not an evil predator who goes around committing vile acts. I am a lonely, vulnerable man who made the mistake of being flirty to a girl who was a bit too young. The phrase a bit too young is doing a lot of heavy lifting. YandereDev would say that he has been panicking for 16 hours now and that he's in a full panic attack mode over this. And the victim would say, I don't know what to do. And YandereDev would respond, disappoint the people, since destroying a man's life is not worth it. The minor would go on to say, I feel like I'm exposing a boyfriend, but you're 35. YandereDev would respond, please spare my life. I haven't done anything so bad that I deserve to lose everything, absolutely everything forever. He continues on saying, this should be an easy call, and then guilt trips the victim by saying, this is actually the worst thing that has ever happened in my life. Nothing else compares, while the victim is apologizing to him. In response to this apology, he would say, if you were genuinely sorry, you'd save me. You are the only human on earth who can save me. Please do not bring this much harm into someone's life to entertain some people on the internet. This next part is actually sickening. The victim would discuss this idea that they might end up traumatized over this situation, and YandereDev would respond saying, you are the one traumatizing me. This here is trauma. This is abuse. This is power imbalance. I am being emotionally abused by you. This conversation would continue on, and it is very gross, but I'm only going to skip to the highlight here, which is YandereDev guiding the victim on what they should say to the person making the video so that the person wouldn't make the video. With YandereDev saying, you can say, I know what the laws say, but I don't want to risk it. It's my decision as the victim. And even, it's my recording, so it's my decision to make, not yours. You can be forceful with him, make it clear that your word is final and he does not have a say in the matter. The victim would respond, I don't like this. This is textbook. And YandereDev would respond, after this experience, I will never want to talk to a minor for the rest of my life. It is anti. I am trying to convince a minor to stop being entangled with my life, so this is really as far as possible from. I cannot express clearly enough how awful this is, how awful this entire conversation is. And this conversation would lead to the victim allegedly striking down the video about this situation as soon as it became public. Initially, people theorized that YandereDev had taken down the video under the victim's legal name. However, based on the victim's own testimony on a live stream, it would appear that they were the one behind the takedown, and we aren't sure how involved YandereDev was in that decision.
Yes, I did copyright strike the video because they were my recordings that I took. So I have full legal right to do that.
Since YandereDev discussed all of this with the victim's opinion on the situation seems to have changed. They've started explaining that their friend convinced them that what YandereDev was doing was wrong, and that they don't think there was anything wrong with it, and that people are blowing the situation out of proportion and lying about it and taking information out of context. But I think the context speaks for itself. I don't think any of what YandereDev did here was appropriate, and I don't think there is a justification for it.
To an extent, I can understand it's hard to come to terms with a person you idolize doing something awful, but I can confirm Alex's admission to these texts and calls, and I hope in the near future he will do the right thing and make his admission public as well. And unfortunately, with Jane being a huge fan of Alex and being greatly infatuated with him, his coercion worked, and Jane wanted to back out and retract her allegations. She even posted a comment on another creator's TikTok video stating that he convinced her that ruining his career was bad. And really, I think that says it all right there. Following this, I was unsure if I would be posting this video at all, because from the beginning, I made it a priority for her to maintain full control of how her story is told at all times. That's something I pride myself on in the very few situations like this I've been involved in the past, is always putting the victim first. And so I told her throughout this entire process that if she ever changed her mind and didn't want her story to be shared, I would respect her decision. But that was if she came to that conclusion on her own. And sadly, I hadn't anticipated if someone she alleged was actively her for months would push her into silence and not seeking proper help that she had so passionately wanted throughout this entire process. Not just for herself, but for other alleged victims of Alex as well, who have been in contact towards the end of the original video being put together. At this point, after discussing with Jane's friend, the alleged victims, and others involved, we were unfortunately put into a situation where we had to decide between Jane's wishes and the wishes of all the other victims who also couldn't speak out for themselves, and were begging us to post the video with the accompanying evidence to expose Alex for what he's allegedly done to numerous young girls. We were forced to decide if, at this point, this project had come so far that it had to leave the victim's hands, meaning Jane, and enter the public responsibility. Because without the evidence, and especially with Alex convincing her to backtrack her previous accusations, he would face no accountability, and we had to consider if this just meant he would become better at hiding potential future abuse. Would we just have to sit around and wait until this happened again to another girl? If we were to do nothing and this whole situation blows over and someone else did end up becoming victimized, we would feel at least partially responsible for not taking action when we had the chance to prevent it from ever happening. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've spoken with someone associated with Alex who wanted to learn more about the situation, being just as concerned for Jane's safety and well-being as the rest of us. And of course, being someone who is far closer to Alex than I will ever be, we had some differences of opinion, but there were also many things we agreed on. And while they don't agree with this video moving forward, they understand why those of us involved feel that it's a necessity. It was a very respectful and productive conversation, and I would like to sincerely thank this person for being cordial and reaching out to me. Unsurprisingly, though, this person denies that Alex ever had any malicious or illegal intentions with Jane. Though I feel with what Alex has said in these voice calls and text messages, the best case scenario, he led this girl on to allow her to view that they were in a romantic relationship and didn't shut it down despite having many opportunities to do so over the past several months. And worst case scenario, he's done some very illegal things. And with those options, I am not taking any chances, because I personally don't trust Alex enough to give him the benefit of the doubt. Even if Jane is lying about certain things, which I'm not saying she is at all, he still allowed these interactions to happen. Jane is a child, and he is the idolized public figure with millions of followers. She's compared coming forward with her allegations to a breakup with a boyfriend. So obviously she feels hurt and affected in some type of way because he allowed it to get there. So after much discussion with everyone involved, it was a unanimous decision that we'd gotten the ball rolling on this video and there was no turning back, especially with details and portions of the evidence already made public. A video with the evidence would be posted in some form. However, I went back and modified Jane's audio clips to disguise her voice, as that hadn't been done for the original video, and we decided not to include her testimony given during our interview, which had been retracted in its entirety. It felt like a decent compromise with wanting to bring the evidence to light while also acknowledging Jane's desire to now be completely uninvolved. Since her retraction, she's been doing a lot to try to diminish the abuse, all for Alex's sake. It's a bit ironic because throughout the interview I conducted with Jane, we chatted quite a bit about the recent Colleen Ballinger situation, another YouTuber accused of grooming her underage fans. And it became a topic of conversations partly because Jane has been closely following the story and is a big fan of Adam McIntyre, one of Colleen's alleged victims who has been very outspoken about her wrongdoings. And in that particular case, when we've talked about it, she is able to objectively recognize inappropriate behavior from an adult. But unfortunately, she's got too many feelings wrapped up in this instance and wants to protect Alex at all costs. And this is why I and everyone else involved with the situation feel that the proof of Alex's misconduct needs to be made public, even if it goes against Jane's wishes right now. Make no mistake, continuing on and sharing Jane's story without her sickens me to my core. As a victim myself, it feels foul, because the last thing I ever wanted to do was further violate a victim's or remove their autonomy. However, this has grown bigger than one singular person, and people need to know about this. They need to know what Alex has done and make an informed decision on whether they want to support him or not, especially with much of his fan base still being underage. I'm aware that many people may strongly disagree with this decision to proceed with the video, and I completely understand and respect that viewpoint. So likewise, I hope everyone understands and respects the position we were in, choosing whether or not we would allow any potential further abuse to happen and more alleged victims to be harmed. We truly believe we've made the best decision for everyone involved under these circumstances.
At this point in time, members of the Yandere Simulator team started withdrawing their support of the project or their contributions entirely. Members of the team like Michaela Laws, the voice actor of Yandere-chan across the past 10 years, have completely disassociated from the project, with Yandere-chan's voice actor stating, "In terms of my voicing Yandere-chan, I am right now in a state of mourning. I've voiced her and others in the game for almost 10 years, and my contributions to the project are almost innumerable. I walked in a volunteer, loyal only to the project's development and completion. I did not join to be a defender or arbiter of anyone's actions outside of the project." I think it speaks volumes that people like this have never left the team until now. I think it just drives home how severe this situation is. This brings us quite nicely to YandereDev's response, titled "I'm sorry," posted on September the 25th. Where YandereDev would say the following: "You've probably heard some really concerning stuff over the last few days. You might have seen a video that has left you feeling worried, disappointed, and wondering what I have to say for myself. There's a part of me that wants to say, no, you don't understand. The video was edited in an extremely dishonest and misleading way, blah 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 blah. But no, I'm not going to focus on that. There's a part of me that wants to do what I usually do, and type out a massive essay where I over-explain absolutely every single detail about the situation, provide context to absolutely everything, go point by point down the list of every possible fact that can make the situation easier to understand. But no, I'm not going to do that. This isn't a blog post about how, actually, you see, I didn't really do anything all that bad. If you consider all the facts, I'm just gonna take accountability and own up to a really huge mistake that I've made. A few months back, a fan of the game DM'd me and wanted to chat. I normally just turn fans away and tell them that I'm busy, but in this case, the fan seemed really funny and interesting, so I agreed to talk. After around 2 months, I agreed to do a voice chat with her. Right off the bat, she let me know that she was 16 at the time. At the time, I didn't even perceive this as a problem. What do I care what her age is? She's just a funny fan of the game who wants to talk to me. This is no big deal. I rationalized to myself that it was fine. We talked for a while and eventually I started feeling really comfortable speaking to her. I started talking to her the same way I would speak to any of my other friends, like she was one of the guys. I made the same type of vulgar jokes that I would make when voice chatting with my other friends. This was an absolutely unacceptable mistake. Just because I felt really comfortable speaking to her does not make it okay. That's no excuse, not in the slightest. Occasionally, she would say something flirty towards me. Most of the time, I would shut that down immediately and refuse to reciprocate. However, there were times where I didn't shut down and let her talk to me that way without stopping her. Obviously, it goes without saying that this was not okay. This was at the point in time where I should have instantly disengaged and ended all contact with her. In any interaction between an adult and a minor, it is the adult's responsibility to put an immediate stop to any inappropriate behavior. There was absolutely no excuse for tolerating this as if it was okay. At some point, she started recording our conversations so that she could share my jokes with her friends. However, one of her friends interpreted my remarks as showing interest in her. They convinced her that I was trying to and that she should release all of her recordings to expose me. Her friend pressured her into providing the recordings to a drama YouTuber who began producing a video about the situation. A preview of the video revealed that the intention of the video would be to characterize me as a representing clips of the conversation that sounded explicit. Obviously, it doesn't matter how the recordings were made public because the entire situation never should have been allowed to happen in the first place. I'm just explaining why such a video even exists. Watching the recordings of the way I interacted with her has been mortifying to me. I keep thinking, I actually did that, and you goddamn idiot, whenever I'm reminded of something inappropriate I said in a conversation with her. I'm not going to spend a million years belaboring this point, but I want you to know that I have been kicking myself non-stop since this situation happened. It was foolish, extremely damn foolish, for me to think to myself that it was possible to rationalize an adult becoming friends with a minor, because no matter what the adult's intentions are in the beginning, there are so many potential things that can go wrong involving an adult and a minor alone together that the scenario should have never been allowed to happen in the first place. Over the years, a lot of people have contacted me telling me they look up to me, that they admire me, that I inspired them. Right now, I'm thinking about all of the people who ever said those words to me, and I realize that my actions have completely invalidated their words. Someone who makes this kind of mind-numbingly stupid mistake is not admirable or inspiring. I let the fans down, I keep saying to myself, over and over. Years of trying my best to prove that I'm not the bad guy that people say I am, and then I go and screw up so badly that I've retroactively vindicated some of the hate that has been directed at me. It's ironic. I've always tried so hard to disprove the hateful remarks that people make about me by doing the opposite of what they expect of me. At every turn, I try my absolute best to disprove every ignorant and hateful false accusation that people make about me. And now, look what I've gone and done. Instead of doing everything in my power to disprove the allegations, I made some remarks that sounded really questionable. I'm not even gonna say it only sounds bad because it's out of context. If only you had the context, you'd understand how it wasn't that bad. I'm just gonna own up to this one. The fact that it even happened at all, regardless of the context, is bad. There is no excuse. It's one thing to make a stupid mistake that results in self-humiliation. It's another to make a mistake that affects all the people that associate with me. However, it is a mistake on an entirely different level to make a mistake that involves an inappropriate interaction with a minor. At this point in time, it is difficult to determine exactly how much this is going to impact the development of Yandere Simulator. If I have to replace huge numbers of assets, hundreds of voice-acted lines, for example, I won't lie, that's going to be a really bad setback. I really only have myself to blame for it though. For what it's worth, I'd like to make you aware that the fan I spoke to has expressed her feelings on the situation. You can find her post here. I feel like it's going to take a really long time for me to forgive myself for such a stupid mistake, but as a first step, I've donated $1,000 to RAIN, an organization that provides care and benefits to survivors of abuse. I know that it doesn't instantly wash away my bad decisions, but I hope it demonstrates that I'm willing to do whatever necessary to begin atoning for my mistakes. I'd like to apologize to my volunteers, to my fans, and to anyone who has ever called themselves my friend. I am truly and sincerely sorry. Actions speak louder than words though, so I'm going to try my hardest to grow as much as I can from this and make absolutely sure that nothing even remotely similar to this ever happens in the future. I have so many issues with this blog post, I do not even know where to begin. He keeps bringing up this idea that he could debunk a lot of this by saying that the video was edited in a dishonest way, or that a lot of the situation lacked context, and if you had all the facts it would be better, but he says he's not going to do that. Though I think it's important to note that he is still making a defense for himself by saying this. If he wasn't going to do anything like that, he wouldn't have brought up this idea that he could have done it, but he's not going to, because it still implicitly implies that he could disprove some of this or provide more context to this that would make it more okay. He's just choosing not to. I think that it really undermines the apology he's trying to make here. I also think him using language like really huge mistake I've made, bad decision, and extremely damn foolish lack an understanding of how severe this situation actually is. These are not mistakes, foolish, or bad decisions. These are intentional actions by a 35-year-old man that come across as incredibly concerning, and understandably, people consider this behavior to be predatory. He waters down his comments to just vulgar jokes that he would make when voice chatting with other friends, but that isn't the case. He was continuously making inappropriate comments, not just jokes. He brings up that she would say flirty things towards him, and most of the time he would shut it down and refuse to reciprocate. However, there were some times where he didn't shut it down and he let her talk to him that way without stopping her. The problem is that he was also making flirty comments back. He presents this in a way as if the minor was making all of the advances and he had no involvement in that, as if his only mistake was not stopping the conversation. But his mistake was also being entirely involved in the conversation and saying inappropriate comments on his own behalf. He brings up how the victim's friend apparently pressured the victim into making the situation public, but he doesn't talk about the fact that when the situation became public, he pressured and manipulated the victim into trying to take the video down and get this situation to die before it became public. He was incredibly coercive, but his response to all of that isn't brought up at all here, as if he just wants to pretend that that didn't happen and hopes that people won't read into the situation far enough to become aware of that fact. I think it's important to bring up that he discusses the recordings of the ways he interacted with her and how mortifying they've been. However, he then immediately states that he's not going to spend a million years belaboring the point. I think you should actually detail what was said within those conversations, and I think that the reason he chose not to is because he knows that if he actually talked about what was said, it would dig him a grave way deeper than he could ever possibly crawl out of. I think it's incredibly embarrassing for him to make all of these comments about his fans and the people he inspired, saying that someone who makes this kind of mind-numbingly stupid mistake is not admirable or inspiring. "I let the fans down" is a phrase he uses within this blog post, which I feel misses the mark so severely because you should be thinking about the victim you hurt right now. I don't believe I see a single apology to her within this entire blog post. It's more an apology to the audience and his community for letting them down. It's almost comical that he brings up that it's difficult to determine how much it'll impact Yandere Simulator. I think it is comical that he would even begin to discuss how this may impact the development of Yandere Simulator, as if that is even in the equation anymore. He completely has himself to blame for it, and I would be shocked if anyone was willing to support this project following this point. He should wipe his hands clean of Yandere Simulator and never work on this game again. Sell it or do whatever you want with it, but do not work on this project any further because you have clearly shown that you cannot be trusted with the power you have been given. I also think it's interesting that he highlights the victim's response that comes across as if they were coerced by him into making this response and defends him instead of actually talking about the situation. It's a very one-sided response that I feel is a major flip from how the victim initially felt about the situation. His donation towards a charity at the end feels like a vain attempt to hopefully water down the amount of backlash he gets by showing that he's done something to change or improve, but I feel like it rings hollow. It's almost as if the donation was made as a cheap excuse to get away from the situation without properly tackling or responding to it. And I hope that this is the final blog post he makes and there's never anything following this, because this is absolutely disgusting. It's an embarrassing response, and I'm shocked that he would ever publicize it. With that being said, that's the entire situation for you, and I hope that it gives you the context needed so that you can understand what went on, why it was a problem, and will hopefully now have the full context needed to remove your support from Yandere Simulator or further spread word about the situation. If this video helped you be informed about the situation, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out my other social media. With that being said, I've been HarleyTBS. I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully I never have to talk about Yandere Simulator again, and peace. Hello again, it's me from the future, quickly making a final note before I publicize this video. The video you're about to watch is technically still on the channel because I am contractually obligated to keep it up until a certain date. While this YouTube is really confusing, I'm trying to make it as simple for you guys as possible, but it is still a struggle. Like Hayao Miyazaki, last time I said this was my final video on YandereDev, I was lying. Since last week, there's been more allegations and more responses, with more people bringing up old situations and new situations alike, levying more claims against YandereDev, and YandereDev responding in a blog post titled Moving Forward and a Patreon post titled So What Now? Once again, we have a lot to discuss in regards to YandereDev, and once again I find myself questioning how I always find myself returning to this subject. If you didn't catch my last video about this situation, I would suggest watching that before this one so that you're caught up. Thanks for the support in that video, and if you'd like to subscribe because you really appreciate that I made that video and you're very grateful towards me, right? You guys are very grateful, right? Click the button. Come on. Just press it. On October the 1st, YandereDev released a blog post titled Moving Forward, where he says the following.
I've been exhibiting horribly self-destructive behavior on a regular basis for a long time now. As a result of the many conversations I've had over the past few days, I think I can pinpoint the cause. My downward spiral is the result of consistently making incredibly unwise lifestyle choices that have caused my mental health to deteriorate massively over time. It didn't hit me until recently just how bad things had gotten. Haven't left the house since July 2019. 2019! Oh my god! No real life acquaintances. 16 plus hours on the computer every day, not programming the game. No vacations in half a decade, prioritizing work. It shouldn't be any surprise whatsoever that when you allow both your body and mind to completely waste away, you dissolve into a mistake machine. A person that is capable of making nothing but bad decisions, who exists solely to cause problems for others.
From the start of this document, it already seems like YandereDev is trying to minimize what he actually did, talking about how these unhealthy life choices have caused his mental health to deteriorate. And while there is probably a lot of truth to that, I don't believe that YandereDev has a healthy life. if that makes sense. Ultimately, it's still an excuse. He uses the justification of having problems within his personal life that are entirely caused by his own decisions as the backing of his argument as to why he's just a mistake machine, which severely minimizes the actual decisions he's made. And as I said in my last video, it's not a fair representation of what he actually did. Writing down the wrong answer on a school test is a mistake. Sending inappropriate messages to someone who still needs to take tests in school is not. Just like in his last blog post, YandereDev does not go in detail on what he was accused of and what he admitted to within this document, instead choosing to focus solely on throwing a pity party for himself and the fact his entire game is falling apart at the seams as everyone involved start to leave. I've said this before in other videos and I'll say it again, I always appreciate when someone will actually directly address what they've done without watering it down for their audience. If you can be honest and tell the truth about what you did, even if it makes you look bad, I think that goes a long way in showing that you regret what you did. And while people won't forgive you just because you regret what you did, it will make your apology land a little better. Ultimately, what YandereDev did was an intentional and insidious thing, and there is no justification for it. Most people are able to go about their life making mistakes, sure, but not inappropriately involving themselves with 16-year-olds at 35. And I think it needs to be said that all of the problems listed here are caused by YandereDev's own action or inaction and aren't the blame of anyone else. I think that once you show that you cannot be trusted with a position of power like being a public figure, that you do not get a second chance. You were incredibly blessed to be put in a position that so many people would dream for, so many people would kill for. To have major public figures like PewDiePie cover your game and have a massive financial backing off of your successful YouTube channel and Patreon page. You took advantage of the position you were put in and exploited someone who was not only a fan, but also a child in the process. The severity of that cannot go understated, and any suggestion that you could return to your platform and continue to make the game following this point should be immediately shut down. I think you should work on your mental health and improve who you are as a person, not for any prospect of returning to your career or the position you were previously in, but because the people in your life deserve better and other people shouldn't have to put up with the fact that you are this bad. If you work on who you are, at least outside of your career, you can actually do something with your life.
Since the last blog post, a lot of people have reached out to me to share the same advice. See a therapist. Get hobbies that don't involve a computer or TV screen. Step away from game development. You're already doing that. You weren't working on the game already. But sure, step away from game development for a few months. All of it can be summarized as start making healthy life choices that will turn you into not a... And I honestly can't argue with that. This might sound like a really random time to launch into an anecdote, but I'd like to mention something really quick. Recently, somebody messaged me to tell me something. A few years ago, when his girlfriend was on the verge of she sent me fan mail. I responded to her to thank her for her kind words. Apparently, this cheered her up so much that she stopped thinking about herself. She's still alive today. He just wants to tell me, thank you for saving my girlfriend's life.
But you can't do this to me. I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
I've seen enough excuses from YandereDev across the years to justify his many mistakes that I think what he's doing here is blatant and obvious. Yeah, I know both of those words are synonymous. We're not going to talk about how bad my script writing is. I think starting a follow-up response to allegations of predatory behavior by talking about all the good you've done for people actually has the inverse effect, because it makes it more obvious to the people reading it that your intent is just to make them believe that you're a good person and forgive you, when you've actually done nothing to change. I'm sure that this was a moment very close to your heart, but it has no relevance being in a response to allegations of this sort, and honestly, I think there's only so many times that you can play a card like this before it becomes way too overused. I've seen YandereDev respond to way too many controversies to ever be able to see this response as anything other than insidious and underhanded. But to be honest, I don't think that actually matters here, because this response wasn't made for me. This response was not made for anyone who's ever spoke negatively about YandereDev or supported a video that spoke negatively about him, because those people were never going to support Yandere Simulator again in the first place. This is a desperate attempt at winning over people who are still on the fence after hearing the allegations about YandereDev but really like the project. People who have been fans of Yandere Simulator for years or are too young to understand how severe this situation is. Playing the nice guy who's being cancelled by a mob for making a mistake makes Alex look a lot better to people who aren't fully informed on the situation, or people who are more willing to believe him than anyone else. And I'll tell you now that for a lot of people, this kind of response has actually worked in winning them over. If you read his comments on these blog posts, though I believe that he's deleted a lot of negative comments towards himself, most of these comments are incredibly positive, saying they forgive him, or that he made a mistake, or that they don't even think what he did was really that bad. And this is the response that he's looking for. He's still trying to present himself as some good person who made a mistake because he neglected his mental health, and not because he actively chose to do a malicious and predatory act.
I keep thinking about that story and other stories like it. Times when someone reached out to me to let me know that I cured their depression or saved their life. Those stories make me feel like I have the potential to affect the world in a positive way. But that's only if I stop making such dumb decisions all the time. And I can only stop making dumb decisions if I get healthy. And the only way to get healthy is to start making better life choices. If I want to do more good than harm to the world, I have to get my head straight. That might involve spending less time at the PC, less time on the internet, and less time developing the game. Bro! A lot of people have been asking me if the recent controversy will cause me to stop developing the game, or give the game away to another developer. I'm not ready to answer those questions. I will need to do a tremendous amount of thinking before I can make any monumental decisions like that. I really enjoy working in Yandere Simulator when you can be bothered to work. If I didn't, then I wouldn't be willing to do it continuously is a stretch. The thought of taking time away from it makes me feel incredibly sad. But neglecting absolutely every aspect of my mental and physical health has caused me to devolve into a danger to myself and others. And that's not something I want to be. I don't take a step away from development, but perhaps I should. At least long enough to decide the best way to proceed from here. The project doesn't need to outright die, but it definitely should be paused until I have made significant progress towards evolving into a much healthier person.
I think based on his first statement here about having the potential to affect the world in a positive way, that what he's really asking for in this blog post is a second chance. He wants people to forgive him and forget and move on. But I think that YandereDev has gone way too far and has been given way too many chances with all of the controversy he's been in, that the fact he's still at a platform till now was already shocking as is. So to find out that he believes that after doing all of this, after taking advantage of his platform to do something like this, he still believes that he can recover this somehow, is just shocking. He should give up on Yandere Simulator and move on with his life. He should focus on getting healthy and becoming a regular person in society. I don't mean to repeat myself, but he's had his chance and he wasted it. I will give some leeway here on his response to the question of whether he would stop developing the game or give the game away. Him saying that he's not ready to answer those questions is kind of fair. I do believe it would require a tremendous amount of thinking before you could make a decision like that when this has been something you've spent years of your life on. Though I think everyone knows what the right decision would be to make here, and I think he knows it too. He shouldn't be developing this game anymore. He shouldn't have a public platform anymore. He should just return to his regular life. Not that he really had much of a life, but he could definitely make one for himself with all the money he has from Yandere Simulator. He shouldn't be given a second chance. Or a third chance, or a fourth chance, or how many chances are we on now? I think there's only one part of this entire blog post where he truly and directly responds to the situation, and that's when he says, neglecting absolutely every aspect of my mental and physical health has caused me to devolve into a danger to myself and others, and that's not something I want to be. We can interpret how honest he's being in this statement in a million different ways, depending on how credible you think YandereDev's word is, which to most people, it isn't. Personally, I think starting this sentence by setting up the excuse for yourself that this is because you neglected your mental and physical health is cowardly, but I don't believe he actually does want to be a danger to other people. I don't think many people who do the things YandereDev has done actually want to be that kind of person, but he is that kind of person, and until he changes, he's going to remain that kind of person. And I don't know if I believe YandereDev really can change.
Over the years, Yandere Simulator and myself have been through countless controversies. I'm sorry for not properly addressing most of these controversies, and for responding to some of those controversies in ways that only made things worse. There are still a lot of things I want to address in a proper manner one day, but now is not the time.
I think it speaks volumes about how bad this situation is that YandereDev is talking about how he failed to address prior controversies, because this is not a guy known for acknowledging wrongdoing. I mean, he has an entire debunk page dedicated to responding to these allegations and making excuses for himself. But it's too little and too late. He's had his chance to respond to all of these controversies, and he failed to respond to every single one of them. And now he's done something so heinous that no one will ever forgive him. It's too late, and it's been too late for a while. If you wanted to be a better person, you should have actually been a better person. You don't get the chance to work backwards and try and undo what's already happened. That's not how this works. You've hurt way too many people for way too long. Not that I actually think he ever would properly address all of his controversies though. I think he's just saying this because it will make him look better. I think if he really wanted to address them properly, he would have done it off of his own back, and not now that he's been pushed into a corner. And I think if he really did want to respond to them, he probably would have done it in this blog post. Saying he's going to do it one day means he'll probably push it back and never actually do it. And he would only ever do it in the event where people were forgiving him, which means it would never be an honest apology. If you wanted to properly show you'd learned and changed, you would already have proof in the actions and decisions you've made that would show that was the case. You wouldn't suddenly start making progress the day you respond. People who have made a mistake and want to actually resolve that mistake have normally been going to therapy for quite a while and actually working on themselves, so when they make a response to the situation, you can see that there's progress already being made. But in this case, I think his statement here rings hollow. You aren't sorry for what you did, you just regret being caught.
I'd like to thank the animators, artists, composers, modelers, voice actors, and YouTubers who have helped make Yandere Simulator into what it is today. If we won't continue on this journey together, I'll always remain thankful to you for the assistance that you have once granted me. I received a lot of messages since the last blog post. Many of them were harsh, rightfully so. But there were also a lot of messages equivalent to, I want to see you improve your mental health and finish your game. I've been following the project for 8+ years, and I don't want to see it end like this. Yandere Simulator's audience has shrunken over the years. For good reason, the game fucking sucks. But despite everything, there are still a lot of people in this world who love Yandere Simulator. They love the characters, the setting, and the story. They enjoy speculating about what will happen towards the end of the game, what occurred in the unrevealed parts of the backstory, and what plot twists might be waiting in the lore. They want to learn how the Aishi condition began, what secrets the Psycho family is hiding, and what's underneath the cherry tree. I don't want to let them down. I owe it to them. For giving me 9 years of their attention, I owe them answers, I owe them satisfaction, I owe them closure. I don't want to cancel the game. I want to keep developing it. But I don't think I can do that if I keep being a mistake machine. I need to find a much better work/life balance. Because the current balance of one, that is bullshit, I'm sorry. That made me drop the headphones. That's bullshit. Because the current balance of 100 to 0 has led me to nothing but a severely damaged psyche and behavior that is as destructive to others as it is to myself. I can't guarantee when will be the next time that I will write a blog post. I'm not even sure what the next blog post will be about. A big announcement, a bug fixing build, or something completely different. It's hard to tell what the future is going to hold. But I just wanted to let you know that I probably won't be posting as frequently as I previously was, or updating the game as frequently as I previously was. All of the steps that I need to take to become a better person involve spending less time in this chair, and more time outdoors. During my time away, I'll be spending a lot more time thinking about exactly how I should proceed from this point forward. I'll be considering all possible options, even the uncomfortable ones, such as reducing the scope of the game to make it into a project that would be easier to finish with limited resources, and the absolute last resort of handing off development to someone else. For what it's worth, I apologize for everything, and I thank you for following the development of Yandere Simulator.
Yeah, it's a pile of garbage.
Yeah, this is shit.
I could make so many responses and so many comments to what was said at the end of this blog post, but I think that what I would say has already been said in this video, my past video, and previous videos I've made on YandereDev in the past. If he actually wanted to work on Yandere Simulator, I think that would be indicative in the progress made towards the game. If these were mistakes, I think he would have showed change, and I don't believe something as severe as what he did could even be considered a mistake. I think that he doesn't actually care about what he did wrong, he just wants to appear as if he's learned and changed because it will benefit his image and mean that people are more likely to forgive him. I think most of this blog post is filler, where he throws a pity party for himself and feels bad for himself about the fact that it's all ended this way. And I think he's as aware as we are that the comments he's receiving from people saying they still want Yandere Simulator to be made are from people who are too young or too ignorant to the situation to understand how bad it truly is. This isn't a situation where you can just return and keep working on the game without any major backlash. People aren't going to move past what YandereDev did here. His mental and physical health being disregarded was not the fault of him working on Yandere Simulator. It was the fault of himself and his own decisions. If he actually wanted to work on himself, he would make those steps. He wouldn't sit here wallowing in his own self-pity complaining about it. He's already discussing his future blog posts in this blog post about what he might be doing next, as if he's just going to move past this and forget it ever happened, but nobody is going to forget about this. It's not hard to tell what the future is going to hold. Yandere Simulator, as we know it, is over, and I doubt my opinion on that will ever change. I hope he works on himself and improves himself, not because of Yandere Simulator or because of the prospect of getting his platform back, but because he actually wants to become a better person. And with that being said, I think we should move on to his Patreon post, because this is where I think what YandereDev is actually trying to say becomes a little more clear.
Well, by now, you guys have probably already heard about everything. I did something careless that has resulted in a massive controversy, and as a result, a lot of Yandere Simulator's volunteers have departed from the project. In some cases, they've even asked me to remove their contributions from the game as well. How will this impact the future of the project? Well, in order to make an educated and informed decision about how I should move forward from here, I will need to evaluate a lot of information. How many volunteers have departed from the project? Which ones specifically requested for their contributions, animations, art, models, music, textures, voice lines to be removed? How many assets will need to be replaced? How difficult and or time consuming will it be to replace those assets? How many people are still willing to assist me? Are they capable of replacing the assets that need to be replaced? The answer to these questions will determine the best way to proceed forward with the project. Will it be possible to replace everything that has... It's Uni assets! Will it be possible to replace everything that has been lost within the span of a few weeks? Or is it something that is going to take months? Should I drastically reduce the scope of the project in order to reduce the number of assets necessary to finish it? The only way to arrive at the answers to these questions is to look through all of the correspondence that I have received over the past week. I nailed the word correspondence. I'm so proud, holy shit. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the immediate future. Until I've had an ample time to develop a full understanding of the situation, it's just not possible to make a meaningful decision about what should happen next. Didn't you already talk about this like last post?
The tone of this Patreon post is entirely different to the tone of his blog post. Considering they were posted on the same day, it is bizarre how one of them discusses how he doesn't know what the future of the project is, he hasn't made a decision on any plan for the future, and how he's going to work on his mental health. And this post, the one to his financial supporters, he talks about the volunteers that have left the project and how he wants to put the project back together, focusing specifically on how he can replace the assets within the game, how long it will take to do that, whether he should reduce the scope of the project. And I think that this speaks volumes about how much YandereDev actually wants to change and how much he just wants to appear like he wants to change. I believe that volunteers who asked to have their parts of Yandere Simulator removed were entirely within their rights, as they were volunteers, and I think that it will make a major impact on whether Yandere Simulator can actually be finished. I think it's a major red flag that in one of his blog posts he talks about how he's going to focus on improving his mental and physical health for the future, and in this blog post he talks about how he's going to spend the immediate future going through all of the emails he's received to see whether he can resolve the issues. One of these posts seems a lot more like YandereDev than the other, and I think it's obvious which one I'm referring to. But the part I find so pertinent to discuss from this post that I decided to include it within my video is what YandereDev says following what he just said.
At this point in time, there are only 4 things I can say for certain. I have received an avalanche of support. Supportive messages over the past few days, begging me to not give up on the game. A lot of people are deeply attached to Yandere Simulator, and I don't want it to end like this. Their worst nightmare would be to see me cancel or quit the project, and I feel the same way. A lot of people who reached out to me over the past few days were animators, artists, composers, modelers, and voice actors who want to help me recover from this massive setback by providing any assets I need in order to restore the game to the state it was in before. It's too early to say anything for certain, but making a full recovery is starting to appear feasible. I consider the notion of giving the project to another developer to be the absolute last resort. I'm too attached to the game to let it go. It's not like I'm completely unwilling to consider the possibility, but I want to consider all other possible options before I accept it as a valid choice. It was probably a massive mistake to allow the game's scope to grow as large as it did. I put myself into a position where I'm completely reliant on a massive team of volunteers, and I can't finish the game without a massive budget requiring a successful crowdfunding campaign. Perhaps the smartest thing to do right now would be to simply reduce the scope of the game to something that can reasonably be expected of one man. Perhaps back in 2015, I never should have made the choice to add voice acting to the game. It was a decision that has only served to increase the number of assets, money, and people that would be required to finish the game. Perhaps reducing the game's scope to a game without any voice acting would be the best move for the project. No need for a crowdfunding campaign if I don't have to worry about hiring dozens of voice actors after all. He wasn't even paying them. I wish I could paint a clear picture for you of the future of the project, but I won't be able to form a complete mental image of the situation until I have finished going through all of the correspondence I've received. Seriously, hundreds of emails. Oh my god. He's doing it again. He's spending hours reading emails.
I have so many emails, guys.
If only I had the choice to just stop fucking reading them.
Seriously, hundreds of emails, I'm not exaggerating. I still don't know who has left the project, who remains, who wants to pull their assets, how many new volunteers are stepping up to help, how much positive sentiment remains, etc. I just need to keep going through emails until I've developed a comprehensive understanding of the situation. If you're reading this post, it means you saw me as being worthy of your support. I apologize if I've disappointed you, and I promise that, at this moment at least, abandoning the project is the last thought on my mind. I genuinely do want to continue development. I just need time to analyze the situation and form a plan. I apologize for any disappointment, and I thank you for supporting the development of Yandere Simulator.
In comparison to the last 2 blog posts, this post comes across as a lot more soulless and corporate. Like he doesn't actually care about what he did wrong, and now he's just focusing on how this will affect Yandere Simulator. I don't understand why he is going from this angle considering what he did. I believe if he actually felt guilty for what he did, he would be focusing on actually trying to be a better person and making it up to the people he's hurt. Not once again talking about his stupid fucking game. We're now up to 3 individual posts about this situation, and I don't believe he's properly apologized to the victim once. He only cares about how this will affect Yandere Simulator and not how his actions have actually hurt people. And I think that is obvious. I think it's safe to say that based on how he presents his personal life as being awful, he doesn't have anything at all outside of this game, and that is probably why it's the only thing he can think of. It's almost comical seeing him talk about the avalanche of supportive messages he's received begging him not to give up on the game. When you take a look outside of this echo chamber of positive messages and realize how large the degree of negativity towards Yandere Simulator and YandereDev is following these allegations. There is no comparison between the positive and negative reception he's received following these allegations because one side so clearly outweighs the other. For some reason, he's under this impression that a full recovery is feasible, when I don't believe it is. I do not believe it's possible for Yandere Simulator to have a successful crowdfunding campaign following this, and I do not believe that the support the game will receive following this point will be anything comparable to what it was before. I believe this project is dead in the water, and any final project that would be released after making this full recovery would never compare with the project he was originally aiming to make. I think he would have to make a lot of concessions, and I think at this point he should just give up. I also find it rather surprising that it's taken him this long to realize that it was a mistake to allow the game to grow to this size. As long as Yandere Simulator has been in development, people have been telling him that he needed to pull back the scope of the game and just release what he promised. He's never done that, and the fact he's only just realized that that's what he should have done after over 9 years is crazy. I had to choke back a laugh the first time I read this post and saw that he was saying voice acting was the reason behind the problems with Yandere Simulator, because everyone is aware of how bad the code in Yandere Simulator is, how much extra work it caused YandereDev to have to go through, how many opportunities he had for help from people like TinyBuild who are willing to help him finish the game, and the fact he kept putting unnecessary features in the game that were only there to make it more silly and not actually progress the game towards its final release. All of these posts have missed the mark on what YandereDev needed to say to actually win people back over, though I do believe that they are very insightful into his actual mental state as of making this video. None of us know what the future holds with this situation, but I think it's safe to say that Yandere Simulator is over. With that being said though, I think this might be the last time I cover Yandere Simulator. Oh no. With that being said, thank you for watching. Hopefully the last thing I ever have to say about YandereDev. I know it's probably not going to be, but genuinely, I am so exhausted with this subject, and this video is way too long for me to ever want to put my foot back in the water again. If you're new to the channel, of course, feel free to subscribe. Check out my other social media in the description down below. Thank you to all of the people who voiced in this video, Callie Mara, Ponder Sprocket, and Blood Oranges. All of them are incredible creators who I would suggest checking out their content, and the fact that they've all appeared for guest roles in this video on such short notice means a lot to me. These are some of my personal friends, people I've met across the years, or in the case of one of them, someone I live with. So, you know, maybe I'm slightly biased, but who cares? If you did watch to the end of the video, tweet this video at me with the caption, "Kanye West is releasing a 40-minute apology video?" ? So I know you've watched it. I have nothing more to say. I am so tired, but I am glad to finally be done with this video after 21 days and counting of working on it. I'll see you next time. Peace.
I came in a bit before the So I walked down the back before the second set settled my debt. I'll miss the rest, that's fine, I guess. The cavern is a crowd around, and I could scarce get by a second breath between the press. Now it's 3 a.m. and I don't know how I'll get home. The way is barely paved. I can't keep my eyes from closing.